Nothing profitable happens until the Lord gives favor. I want to invite you to join me in the Gospel of John, chapter 21, beginning in verse 1 all the way through 8 and then verse 11. It starts like this. After these things, Jesus manifested himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and he manifested himself in this way. Simon Peter and Thomas, called Didymus, and Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee and 2 others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, I am going fishing. And they said to him, We will also come with you. They went out and they got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. But when the day was now breaking, Jesus stood on the beach, yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. So Jesus said to them, Children, you do not have any fish, do you? And they answered him, No. And he said to them, Cast the net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you will find a catch. So they cast, and then they were not able to haul it in because of the great number of fish. Therefore that disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, It is the Lord. So when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put his outer garments on, for he was stripped for work, and he threw himself into the sea. But the other disciples came in the little boat, for they were not far from the land, but about 100 yards away, dragging the net full of fish. Verse 11. Simon Peter went up, and he drew the net to land, full of large fish, 153. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. In the first 4 verses, we see the emptiness of self-activity. The disciples had gone out with Peter's initiative, and they had fished all night, but were empty-handed. Do you find yourself at times being really busy and achieving nothing? In Psalm 127, verse 1, it says this, Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman keeps awake in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to retire late, to eat the bread of painful labors. For he gives to his beloved, even in his sleep. In John 15, verse 5, Jesus says this, I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, he bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. I came across an article the other day on Johnny Manziel. Now, Johnny Manziel, for those of you who don't know, was a really talented football player here in the States. He was actually from this area, one of our neighboring towns here in the Hill Country in Texas, and he was just an incredible quarterback. He did really well in high school, became a local celebrity. He was treated like royalty, and then he signed an agreement or a commitment to play for one of the big universities here in Texas, Texas A&M, and he did even better there and even grew to even larger or more fame. He did so well there in college that he was drafted as the number 1 pick in the NFL 10 years ago. And it was at that point in his life that he came to a realization. And I want to read from this article his words, where he said, I had the chance to walk across the stage at Radio City Music Hall and be a number 1 draft pick in the NFL. I had everything in my life I could have ever wanted. I had money, I had fame. And for some reason, when I got there and I got everything that I wanted, I think that was truly the most empty I had ever felt inside. You know, we can fill our lives with hard work and be successful and be full by the world's standards, but find ourselves in truth to be empty. Have you found yourself there? But listen, being empty is not what the Lord has created us for. In verses 5 to 8, we see that Jesus tells them to throw the net on the other side of the boat. I once read that the difference between success and failure here in this story is the width of the small boat, and the Lord knew it. They catch so many fish, it says that they could not pull them in, and so they had to drag them behind to get to shore. And then in verse 11, we see when Peter pulled them in while standing on the shore, it looks like, it says that they were large fish, and there was 153 of them in the net. And this was a big deal because John tells us, who was a fisherman himself, that it was amazing because the net did not tear. So the exact opposite of what they had been able to achieve working all night. We see in verses 5 to 8 the abundance of Christ's activity compared to the emptiness of their activity. In John 10:10, we read this. Jesus says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." GotQuestions.org gives some commentary on the word abundantly here. It says this: the word abundant in the Greek, it means exceedingly, very highly, beyond measure, more, superfluous, a quantity so abundant as to be considerably more than what one would expect or anticipate. In short, Jesus promises us a life far better than we could ever imagine. He came that we might have a life that is far more than what we could ever imagine. Isn't that incredible? In 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 6, we read this: "Yet we do speak wisdom among those who are mature, a wisdom, however, not of this age, nor of the rulers of this age who are passing away, but we speak God's wisdom in a mystery, the hidden wisdom which God predestined before the ages to our glory. The wisdom which none of the rulers of this age has understood. For if they had understood, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. But just as it is written, things which eye has not seen and ear has not heard, and which have not entered the heart of man, all that God has prepared for those who love him." We have no idea, we have no comprehension of just how abundant, just how incredible this life is that is found in Christ. Hudson Taylor, that well-known missionary to China, who served for years and had what grew into a very significant, impactful ministry in that country of many coming to know Jesus. He once wrote this to his sister, explaining what had just happened to him. You see, he had, for the first part of his ministry in China, he had been very busy, and he was worn out, and he was frustrated. Really, he found all that, at the end of all of that work, to just be empty. And he said this to his sister: "As to work, mine was never so plentiful, so responsible, or so difficult. But the weight and the strain are all gone. The last month has been perhaps the happiest of my life, and I long to tell you what Christ has done for my soul." Hudson Taylor had come to realize that this ministry was the Lord's ministry, and he needed to be about trusting the Lord and not himself. The Lord did not create you nor save you to live a life of emptiness, but one of abundance. This life is found only in Christ. Are you living empty or living abundantly? Are you hearing from Jesus and responding to him? My name is Kelly Doherty. and I am the host of the His Hill podcast. This has been a quick reminder from our podcast. And if any of you would like to get in touch with me, please feel free to do so. You can do so by email, and that address is Kelly, Kelly, @hishill.org. I want to thank you for listening and remind you, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus.